All right, welcome back to the next video in the series. And in our last video, we created our data source, and we went ahead and hooked that up to our Apollo server. And in this video, we're going to go ahead and create our resolver. And what a resolver does is it basically maps out our query, what the structure of our query is going to be, and it just kind of brings everything together. So let's go ahead and we can close this data source, and let's create a new file under GraphQL, and then let's call that resolvers.js. All right. Okay, so for our resolvers, all right, so let's go ahead and export it immediately. So module.exports. All right, and we need to call our query. All right, and then in our query, you see how we have job and jobs here. It's the same thing we put in our type definitions, jobs and job. So for our jobs, whenever we go do a query, we're just going to map it out. All right. So we want to create an async function. All right. And then for parameters, we want parent, which we aren't going to use right now. Arguments, which we aren't going to use at the moment. And then data sources. All right. And those data sources, let's go ahead and, all right, let's go. So if we go back to our app, we have our data sources here at the beginning of our Apollo server in our app.js, and you see it's jobs API. And we went ahead and destructured that from our callback function. So we're going to make a try catch because we're using async await. And then we're going to say const all jobs equals await. And then we're going to go ahead and go into our data sources dot jobs API. And then we're going to use that function gets all jobs. All right. And that is, so we're going into our data source, which is get all jobs. We're using that jobs API and getting all the jobs. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and return those jobs. And which we could have done is we could have just returned this data source that jobs API that get all jobs. But then when we went to query, when we go to query, see how we have, or we change the structure of our company inside of our query. Right here, we added a company in, but if we go to the API, that's nowhere to be found. If we were to immediately return it, the structure would come out like this, and it wouldn't match up with our type definitions. All right, so now we need to go ahead and map that out. So let's say all jobs dot map. All right, go ahead and grab a job. That's we're going to name each job that we map through. All right, and then let's go ahead, put this all the way, and we'll just add this to the right. Okay. All right, we want our ID, and then that's going to be our job.id, because each job is one of these here in this in our query from our REST API. All right, title, all right, type, job.type. Okay, here. We can probably just do it in order. All right, let's move this down. We'll do our company. And that'll be an object because remember our company is of type company and that is an object. And that requires a name. So company.name. And that'll be job.company. Let's see, the company name. Yep, job.company. We had a logo URL. And that's job dot, let's see, company underscore logo. And then we had our actual URL. And that's job.company underscore URL. All right, so next we have our description. So they say description. Job.description. Let's see. We'll just go ahead and copy and paste the rest. So we have our created at, we'll say URL. Job.url. We have our location. Job.location. And so on and so forth. Job.created at, and then how to apply. All right. And then for our error, we aren't going to do anything right now, so we're just going to throw our error. All right. And let's see. That's our jobs. All right. And since this is an object, we're going to create another object. We can open this back up. Just copy the same format, async. And this is for our job. Where was it? In our type definitions. Yeah, job right here. And then we're going to have our ID that's going to be passed in. And we're going to pass that in when we go ahead and do our actual query. All right. So need to pull out parent, which we aren't going to use. We're going to destructure. So up here, it was arguments. Instead of typing arguments.id, that's the ID that we pass here and that we said was going to be here. If it would have been called name, we would destructure and put name. But for this instance, we're putting ID. And then we need to destructure data sources. All right, and then we're going to do another try catch. And then const job equals await data sources dot jobs API dot get. Yeah, let's just copy and paste it. Get job by ID. And then we're going to pass our ID into it. All right, and then we need to return, and it's the same as up here. If we just immediately returned it, whatever structure this was, that's how our query, our playground would have been, or our query. And those would have to match. So we wouldn't have this company. It would be company underscore URL and company underscore logo in here inside of our job. All right, so let's go ahead and copy all of this, paste it. All right, and then we're just going to throw our error like up there. All right, so that is it. Let's go ahead and start our server and see if we run into any problems. So our server is running on localhost 3500, and we have our other server running, our React server running. Let's just exit out of these, create a new one. Let's refresh. So we forgot to add our resolvers in. So let's go ahead and import our resolvers. See, we all make mistakes. And then resolvers. Perfect. All right, so I see what our problem is. We didn't export our data source. Module.exports equals jobs API, and that should do it. Let's run our yarn server again. There we go. All right, so see, it's just small things that you have to remember. So you have to make sure we export things after we create them. All right, so here is our schema that we created. All right, we have our company, our job, our type. If we go to docs, this is what we can query. So let's go ahead and query our jobs. All right, if we click jobs, all right, it gives us our types. And what we want to query, let's say the title, and let's say the URL. Let's go ahead and close these. And here goes our titles, and here goes our URLs. All right, so that's it for this video. We basically finished our back end. In the next video, we're going to go ahead and start working on our front end. So see you guys there.